The good take, guys, again. Again, we're down one Chris. It is just myself, and if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, and Marcus, yeah. Chris is still in the bad take zoo, so yeah, just me and
we need to keep him in the rehabilitation facility for a little bit longer, or re-education camp, if you will. But
we've sent him links to a Reddit page about why North Korea is good, and until he absorbs the information and can write a summary of it, he's not coming out.
Yeah, that may be like 3 to 4 weeks. That's a mighty big Reddit thread, that one. We'll put links to it in the description of this if anyone wants to check it out. But the other week we were talking about. Well, the conversation started with a talk about a Guardian article that was sent, and we kind of sent to me, and we kind of talked around that a bit, and mainly talking about sort of the bad take economy and cancel culture and moral panic and all that sort of thing. And we talked about maybe expanding on that further. In the meantime, Marcus has sent me another Guardian article on WhatsApp, as he often does. And this one, the headline was, "Upward thrusting buildings ejaculating into the sky. Do cities have to be so sexist?" So, and sort of running with this idea of like sort of bad take economies and that, and that. I just sort of was thinking that we could talk about sort of the way that the Guardian and a lot of media sort of operates with these sort of salacious headlines, because I actually ended up reading that article, and a lot of the stuff in that article wasn't in any way sort of, you know, revolutionary or terribly interesting, to be perfectly honest. You know, it sort of firstly it comes out of the gate saying, like, you know, it's about like the way buildings are made, and this is the sexist, you know, the sexism behind cities and that sort of thing. But like, it never sort of in the article, it never actually links those two things. What it sort of talks about is the way that, you know, cities operate and how in fact that cities tend to be there to support capital and not so much the people within the city, and sort of, I suppose the author of the piece links that to sexism, not so much an issue with actually, you know, what are our cities supposed to do, because they, you know, ostensibly they should be there for people to live and that sort of thing, but what they are there to do is make sure that capital keeps going. And sort of, I suppose, where she makes that link is that, you know, a majority of you know, society is, you know, what is seen as productive work in society is men's work, so therefore, you know, it's not supported by these cities, and therefore it's a sexism problem, not a you know, capital against disenfranchised people problem. So anyway, all of that out of the way, that's not the point of this. The point of this discussion is more around the way that this, and because I should point out that, Marcus, you didn't read the article, you just sent me this article based on the headline. Yeah, pointing out your intellectual dishonesty early on. But yes, just the way that I think that the way that media operates, and The Guardian is one of the worst of this, is creating these sort of inflammatory headlines that don't really bear much on the actual content of the article, and it's to sort of draw people in. But the issue is that people don't read the articles; they just comment on the headlines. So, yeah, that's basically what I'm wanting to talk about. What do you think?
Well, I'm glad that I could be a guinea pig, test subject number one for your theory about the way they work. Yeah, I would agree, and I think it'd be good to go sort of further into sort of what the Guardian is, I suppose. I am currently living in Britain. You obviously have lived here before, and obviously each country has a sort of different news ecosystem to each other. So what the Guardian sort of operates as in the UK is it's like the foremost sort of liberal newspaper, which is humorous because people on the right think it's some kind of left-wing communist manifesto. Dissent constantly, but it's very sort of centre-left a piece, basically. And it's completely free, so you can go on the website, you can access everything. There's not actually anything exclusive to the newspaper itself, but it sort of champions itself as sort of a sort of culturally, it's very liberal. It has reviews of like lots of films and plays, and sort of quite London-centric as well. And sort of politically, it does sort of news, and the thing that's the main thing, the thing that we're going to talk about, the opprobrium bill, is the opinion pieces. So I think the Guardian is very good for just getting news. You can go on there, the first thing that comes up is just a live blog where it just says the things that are actually happening on the day. No problems there. But the problem is it publishes about 10 opinion pieces a day. God knows how well. It doesn't actually make money. It's having to fire people now. But it sort of acts in Britain as the sort of opinion arbiter for sort of how far sort of mainstream left liberal opinion can go, really. Because the thing is, in Britain, there are trenches and trenches of right-wing crap, basically, in terms of newspapers. You've got The Sun, the Daily Mail, loads of ones owned by Rupert Murdoch, the Times, all this kind of stuff, and they basically publish what you could imagine for sort of right-wing mags, basically, where they just publish, immigrants are bad, single mums are the problem. They're similar to the Guardian in that you could go on there and just get live news updates, and if you didn't see any opinion stuff, you'd probably be okay. But yeah, they're the kind of main stuff that you actually find in corner shops, for example. If you just went to a corner shop to buy a newspaper, it would mainly be The Sun, stuff like that, basically. Because another thing that's important for the Guardian in comparison to sort of a more mainstream one, the ones that sell for 30p when the Guardian's like £2, is the Guardian is written very much in mind with sort of college or university educated reader, basically. Like something like The Sun, I think it is actually written, or the Daily Mail is written for a reading age of 8, I think it is, or maybe 12. But basically, they're written for a stereotypical sort of, sort of petty-minded conservative. Well, the Guardian's supposed to be for a liberal, university-educated person. And yeah, the opinion pieces, they reflect that worldview to a T. Is there actually a Guardian? Is there like a one-to-one for something like the Guardian in Australia, or do you not really have anything sort of similar to the Guardian that's homegrown? Obviously, you have access to it anyway.
Yeah, I don't think so. To be perfectly honest, I think we just have theguardian.com.au, basically, the Australian version of it. So yeah, there's not really sort of anything in that regard. I suppose within the sort of Australian landscape. So there is actual left wing and independent news sites and stuff like that, but the majority of our press is dominated by Rupert Murdoch and sort of his right-wing newspapers and and stuff like that. So yeah, it's an absolute hellscape here. But yeah, I think that like sort of what I think I want to get at is I don't necessarily like with the opinion pieces that they have. I don't think they are doing the thing that they think that they want them to do, basically. So, they're very, very eloquently put there by me. So, and it gets back to what I was saying before about the people just reading the headlines. So people read these inflammatory headlines, they don't read any of the article, and basically they come away from it going, well, everyone on the left is just mad, essentially. Because, if I read that article, if I read that headline that I just read out before, and that was it, yeah, I would just go, and if I was someone who wasn't aware of, like, what the actual Guardian is, if I thought that was actual left-wing opinion, I'd just be like, the left is completely mad. And yeah, I think that by doing this, they're actually hurting themselves, rather than actually helping themselves. Because I think a lot of the time people, especially like if you're talking about things like Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, like people just look at they won't even click through on the article. Like if it's posted on Twitter, they will just read the headline and react to that. So they're not even, like, these inflammatory headlines are not even doing the thing of, like, getting people to click through to read the article. It's just causing people to sort of react to these things. And I think it's doing the opposite of what they want people to do, which is see the article, go, that's weird, that's interesting, that's strange, whatever. I'm going to read that article. It's not doing that. It's just people are looking at the headline going, well, this is just fucked up. And then, like, that then becomes a part of their worldview, if you understand what I'm getting at there.
Yeah, it's people basically who think that, well, they think that obviously that, like, the left is ridiculous and has sort of stupid opinions. They see the headline, upward thrusting buildings ejaculating into the sky, and then they go, oh yeah, that confirms to what I already believe. And then they basically ignore, they won't read the article as you say, and then they'll comment on the article being what they think. And yeah, it basically fulfills their sort of worldview bias already. And yeah, I agree with you that I don't think it does. Well, I suppose it depends. It's weird with The Guardian though, because their business model is supposed to be to try and get people to pay us a monthly subscription, basically. Because the way that the news is going, and no one buys newspapers anymore. They're a complete waste of. I wouldn't buy a newspaper, especially not The Guardian, where it's all for free anyway online. They're cumbersome to produce.
Do you buy a newspaper? And you need to, like, wrap up your fragile things. That's the only reason.
Even then, though, I wouldn't buy. To be honest, I'd buy the Sun or the Daily Star, because it's 10p rather than £2, so you can fill up more for cheaper. Yeah, you're gonna need like a good 5 Guardians or something to. Or if you're painting or something, I'm not going to spend a tenner. I don't pay 50p, even if it is to buy a newspaper that just has inflammatory headlines on it and stuff. But yeah, like so the Guardian is struggling to make money. So I think it's doing these things to try and get people to click on them, and then. But again, though, it doesn't seem like something. I wouldn't pay £6 a month to get these like ridiculous headlines, which don't even reflect sort of what's within the article. It seems like a bad way to. I'd say that they'd rather get niche stuff, and try and get more of a niche audience, which is going to pay more money than to attract. Sort of everyone. I mean, the opinion stuff, I imagine, isn't even anywhere near as widely read as the live updates that they have on their stuff. So it seems a bit weird that they would push it so much with these sort of inflammatory headlines. But I suppose it's trying to get more people to actually read the opinion stuff then.
Yeah, but as I said, I don't think it works at all. I think that like it I think that most people, yeah, just look at it and go, that confirms my worldview, or they just go, that's weird, and move on with their life. I would like to sort of see the click through rates that they actually have on articles, and I don't think this is just like necessarily an issue with the Guardian. I think that this is a wider issue with the way that sort of media works, and corporate media, and like, because there is a profit motive involved with this, that it actually, you know, creates this sort of situation where you have to have more sort of inflammatory stuff to get more eyes on your work, so then you can actually, you know, make money. And you know, like, you talk about subscriptions, but they have ads on their website, so that, you know, they would get money from those ads, and based on like how many people actually click on the article and like look at it and that sort of thing, they would get a certain amount for every person that does that. But yeah, I think that there's I think this is sort of a, you know, a wider issue. To bring up our friend Ben Burgess, and I think we've you know, also, Ben, if you're listening, come on the show, have a chat with us. You seem like the guy that would do that. Anyway, but like, there was, and I think we've also talked about this article. I can't remember whether we had.
I think we mentioned it last week, the one where we talked about the Trump protest.
Exactly, but this is the same sort of thing. It's you know, people just reacting to the headline and not to not taking the time to read through an article and like understand what the contents of the article is. But yeah, I think that this is sort of, it's a problem with corporate media, and it's also a problem with how we sort of engage with things, and it's a problem with social media as well, because, you know, basically, you know, we're called the good take guys, but like everything needs to be a sort of hot take, you know, so your headline needs to be a hot take, so it gets people in it. But like, if you see something that's been posted, you want to be the first person to post your hot take on something. So do you take the time to like read the article, which may take, you know, 10, 15 minutes or whatever, or do you just go by the headline and go and put your hot take out there, and just, you know, and I think that's sort of like, this is the issue with this. Like, everything has to be so sort of like, everyone's opinions on things has to be so instant, and so like they have to grab people like straight away, that it's creating this situation where essentially people only read headlines and people only react to the headlines, and no one's actually engaging with the content of work that they're seeing.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. And to get to sort of the economics behind it as well. So newspaper industry obviously really struggling at the minute. You know, people aren't paying for the actual news that they're consuming. A lot of it's for free. And people are looking for ways to actually make money out of it. I think a real problem as well is that, like, the opinion pieces that are being produced and stuff, there's more of them because it's cheaper to make an opinion piece than it is to pay for actual reporting. So obviously, if you do reporting, you're going to have to pay for maybe a few reporters, not just one. They're going to have to go and actually investigate something. So, you know, you're going to have to pay for their travel to go somewhere. They might have to interview people. There might be days where they don't actually produce anything because they've not managed to get the stuff they need to actually do it. It's going to take lots of, you know, for a really good investigative piece or something, you'd need to have like maybe months and months of time if you're going to say you're going to investigate one thing. And at Watergate, the sort of most famous investigative reporting incident ever. It brought down the most powerful man in the world. You know, that took months and years, I think, actually, did that to actually have any effect and stuff. But they managed to do it because there was the Washington Post that did it was such a big institution, and it managed to underwrite the costs of that by the fact it sold so many copies. Now, obviously, people don't buy news and stuff, so you have to get something cheaper out there to create the content that you need to keep going, because you need to have lots and lots of content out there to do the bigger markets and stuff. And obviously, you've got social media as well, so you need to focus on more people with more stuff. So the way to do that without paying for so much investigative stuff to be made is that you just produce these opinion pieces which are divisive and get people arguing and commenting. And like The Guardian actually is heavily based around the comments as well. Like they have a comment section which is completely free to join and to comment on and post on, and some of them get thousands and thousands. I mean, the live one gets over 10,000 usually a day, where people just comment on the news. So another thing that they're trying to do with their articles and headlines is to get people to comment on them as well. But I think there is a general shift towards opinion-based stuff rather than investigative reporting, or even something like statistical analysis, because that just brings in sort of dry headlines and stuff, and it might bring in stuff that doesn't conform to the worldview of the people reading it as well. Like that also gets sort of left behind for these opinion tips. I just wonder as well, what do you actually think are good? Like, do you think there is actually a need for opinion pieces, or would you buy a newspaper that was just factual reporting and investigative reporting and stuff? What is what is a good take to get to what we have?
Yeah. So, well, you know me. I would probably just go for like just a facts based. Like this is this is what's happening. But like again, you can sort of get into like the whole thing of news and what is news, and like there is always a lens that like what is deemed as important in news is obviously through the lens of an editor and that sort of thing, and what they think is important, what they don't think is important. So you're never actually going to get like fully sort of objective view of what the news is, because the news is the news because it's the news. So like I think that I think that the thing is that I don't necessarily even think that like opinion pieces are a bad thing. I think that I like even this one we're talking about now, the skyscraper one, that one. I think that's like a fairly decent piece. I don't think that I don't agree with the author of it as to the reason why cities are the way they are, but I it was interesting to sort of engage in that thought, like why are cities the way they are, like, and her conclusion is that they're sexist and they're built for men, and my conclusion is that they're not necessarily sexist, they're just built to support capital. So like there's these two, but like it's not something I would have thought about had I not read that article. Like that to this day that's never entered my mind, like why are cities the way cities are. So that I think is probably the sort of best thing about opinion pieces, is that they can get people to sort of think about things differently and like engage in the way society is structured and that sort of thing. Like, but my issue is just sort of the way that things are set up, that they I've said it before, it's about these attention-grabbing headlines because they need to push people to, click on their site or buy their newspaper or whatever. And it doesn't, I think it doesn't actually benefit them it doesn't benefit them, I think, financially, because it seems like a lot of the time people don't even actually read the articles. They just read the headline and move on with their life. And I don't think it does anything in regards to like actually making people engage with the subject matter, to actually, make people think about things and like how it sort of changes the world and, how the world operates and that sort of thing. Like, the thing is that, like, I have made a conscious decision whenever someone sends me an article with a weird headline, or if I see a weird headline on social media and I want to, like react to it, I've made a conscious decision that I will click on it and I will read that article so I understand. I don't think that's how people are operating at the moment. I think that they just want to sort of have their take and they read as little information as possible, normally the headline, and then just go with that.
Yeah, it's sort of the it's like an attention economy, innit? Like, people do, as you say, they want to enhance their sort of brand or something. So they want to be the first person with the first reaction to something. And yeah, as you say, it's not conductive then to read an entire article in order to do so. I think it's particularly bad for. Well, it's interesting because you brought up the Ben Burgess article. That was on Jacobin, not the Guardian. I think that stuff like that, where it's. So the thing is, the Guardian is supposed to be a daily newspaper that gives you the news, and it has these opinion articles just sort of put onto it. It's a bit of an awkward fit, really. Something like Jacobin, I think that their headlines, like if you go on like Jacobin, for example. So anyone who doesn't know, Jacobin is a American socialist website, and it does 3 opinion pieces usually a day, and it's basically, it doesn't make any bones about what it's trying to do, which is to further the aim of democratic socialism in America by publishing these opinion pieces. And it doesn't have any live reporting or anything, it just publishes articles, and they tend to have sort of relatively attention-grabbing stuff. So I've just gone on there now. One of the first ones that come up, abolish DHS. That's the headline, the nightmare in Portland. So, it's big attention-grabbing stuff, basically, that gives you an idea of what the article's going to be. And that, I think, is better for them, basically, because they don't have they're not pretending to be neutral or anything. Well, The Guardian, by being a daily newspaper that's trying to do stuff, it might have an opinion, but I think it's trying to, you know what I mean? It's a weird thing to thread, I think, but I think because Jacobin is so upfront about what it is, I think it works better for them than it does for The Guardian, which is supposed to be more impartial than them. They don't have, they aren't affiliated to they might endorse, the Labour Party or the Lib Dems or something more often than they would the Conservatives, who I don't think they ever have endorsed. But yeah, they're not affiliated to any party or any politician or anything. They are just supposed to be a neutral source that anyone could pick up, and you may have disagreements like they have in the comment section and stuff, but it's supposed to be you're able to go on it, engage with it, and then do stuff. I don't know, it's weird. I think, do you know what I mean? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like, I suppose that Jacobin is ostensibly their bread and butter is opinion pieces. That is what they, their opinion pieces are talking about a specific push that they want to make, an ideological push, whereas The Guardian doesn't necessarily have a particular ideological push. Outside of that, it's more looking at things from I would say liberal perspective, not a left-wing perspective. And I think that is something that's really important that I think a lot of people need to understand, is that left-wing and not left-wing, but sort of leftist and liberal are two different things, but I think that these two things are often conflated. And I think like a lot of right-wing commentators have sort of made hay out of that, like taking sort of liberal takes and then assigning them to the left and going, well, the left's all mad, and that sort of thing. But yeah, getting back to what I was saying is that I get what you're saying is that the Guardian, you know, its basic premise is that it is a objective, not an objective news source, but it is a news source. So, you know, you go there to find out what is happening with the world. And, you know, it may, more often than not, you know, go with your sort of ideological beliefs, depending on like who, you know, if you're more sort of on the left side of the spectrum. Whereas Jacobin is like clearly just like, yep, okay, like socialism is great, and we're going to talk about how great it is. We're not necessarily like, we'll talk about things that are happening at the moment that feed into that narrative, but it's not actually the purpose of our thing to just inform you specifically about these things. It's to tell you why we think these things are bad. Yeah?
Yeah, so you might go on The Guardian, you've read what's happening, you might want someone to tell you how to interpret that in a... So, you know, you might read that there's been a riot in Portland. So, you know, cast your mind back before the Black Lives Matter protests. You might see on the newspaper, ooh, there's these protests, what's happening? How do I interpret that? You go on Jacobin, it tells you what's happening and sort of what their take is on it. And yeah, that you know, the Guardian to Jacobin pipeline, I suppose, would be like that.
Yeah, I don't know what the actual pipeline is on that. I don't know how many like liberals would actually like click off of the Guardian and go to like Jacobin or something like that. Like, you know, I think the only reason that sort of any lefty looks at like the Guardian is because it's probably like the best out of a bad bunch, really. Like, you know, it's not the worst place to get news from. Like, you know, you've got it, or you've got essentially, as you said, the Sun or the Daily Mail, and like this is sort of the same sort of thing if you go around the place. Like, even if you like look at the news networks in the US, you know, people talk about like CNN and what's the other one? ABC. I can't remember all of them.
The American ones.
Yeah, the American
MSNBC,
ones.
Fox.
But they talk about like the like CNN and that lot being like left wing and that sort of, and they're clearly not. They're clearly not left wing. At all, and then you've got sort of, you know, Fox and that sort of thing. But if you wanted to, like, if you were a left-wing person and you were like, okay, I have to watch cable news, you're probably going to watch CNN before you're going to watch Fox. And it's that same sort of dynamic with the Guardian against anything else, is that, like, it's probably the best place to get news if you're sort of left-wing, but it's not that great. But anyway, that's sort of...
Yeah, it's more similar to the New York Times or something, really, where like the New York Times is supposed to be written in that informal, you know, like the president said such and such today, and it's just a factual statement kind of thing. Like, you can get all of that from the Guardian. Yeah, it's just, yeah, the opinion pieces give it a bad name, really, because well, I think the problem with the Guardian is, it's an interesting development since like Brexit and stuff, is that like the Guardian is like the only place for sort of liberal commentators to get an outlet, really, and stuff. Like, it's the only place for liberal and left-wing commentators on there. Like, to name some of the biggest ones, you've got Owen Jones, who is sort of relatively left-wing. Well, I would say he's just sort of a Labour Party sort of apparatchik, really, and stuff. He basically just says to vote Labour and like why you should do so. And he's been consistent basically throughout and stuff. I wouldn't call him... This is another problem. He's seen as like the farthest left that you can possibly go. even though he's very mild, really. He's just a social democrat, basically, who writes sort of pieces about why Labour is good and stuff. But yeah, he's not not like a tanky or something. So.
I think he's as far left as the like status quo wants you to go, basically. Like you can go further left than him, but like they will tell you that's the furthest left you can go, because I suppose after you sort of go past social democrat, you get into the territory of dismantling capitalism and stuff like that, and you know, obviously a lot of places don't want that happening. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, so the problem is with The Guardian is it has its readership who mainly vote sort of like, you know, Remain as well. Is since Brexit, it has sort of, newspapers have gone down more of a partisan line with their opinion pieces about sort of, you know, Remain and Leave and stuff. So I think what's happened with The Guardian is it's attracted a lot of people who are not particularly left-wing at all, or even particularly liberal, but they are like sort of people who believe in remaining in the EU, as I said, UN there. And they've started writing opinion pieces for The Guardian, and it's sort of mixed it up a bit more sort of there. Like, it used to have more left-wing people on The Guardian, like before, I would say probably about, before 2015 or something, and a lot of them have just left and writing for other stuff now. Like, it used to have, it's called Pilger's his last name, he's Australian, and he's sort of really left-wing, he wrote for that. Seamus Milne, who became Jeremy Corbyn's head of communications. Yeah, like, you have a lot more left voices on there now. Now it is much more distinctly liberal with Owen Jones on there. He's actually a really good example of the sort of, I think he writes though more like you get the headline, which is one thing, and then the article itself is just making sort of points which chime with the audience. There's one that I read a couple of weeks ago. I've just got it up now. And it says, so this is 2nd of July, is it, or June? So yeah, 2nd of July, so about a month ago. Labour's real struggle is not left v right, it is to keep young and minority voters. So basically, the thrust of the article is that in order to sort of win next time, Labour needs to do more to keep the people who voted for Corbyn on side. And like what? And it's got loads of comments, 1,737, and they close it after a certain amount anyway. So that'll just be in like, I don't know, a day or something. I think they close the comments on a day to stop people from commenting about stuff that's happened afterwards. But anyway, like the point of that is clearly just to get people to comment, say this is a bad strategy, this is a good strategy. I think that is a good encapsulation of a lot of what you've said as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think that, but I again, and I probably should have done a bit of more research before this. I wonder how much say the actual authors of the piece have in like the headline, because I feel like it's not a lot. Like, I feel like if you've taken the time and you've written this sort of, you know, thoughtful piece about whatever it may be, and then I feel like you're not going to then be someone who will just slap a headline on, like some inflammatory headline on it about like, you know, fucking buildings ejaculating into the sky. Like, you know, reading that article, that's like from the like within the article, I feel like it's even like it does talk about that, but it's just a line. It's probably about a line in the whole article about, you know, the phallic nature of buildings, blah blah blah, and it's just more talking about like you know, the symbolism of things and that sort of stuff, and she talks about like how you know, a lot of the terms that they use in architecture for skyscrapers are also like terms that are used to like talk about like you know, the male penis and stuff like that. So it's, you know, that sort of again, I think that sort of stuff is pointless, but it is also very interesting. it's sort of, I don't think it's like necessarily some sort of nefarious thing that is going on. It is, I think, like architecture was predominantly a male, it still is, I imagine, male dominated field, and so to use the phrase that is oft hated, boys will be boys, and so when they're talking about these things, they're actually it's something that probably was a funny joke when someone was talking about it, and it's one of those things that just sort of kept going on and on and on, and then all of a sudden, like, it's completely disconnected from its original, like, crass meaning, and that sort of thing. But I don't think that is necessarily a indication that cities are sexist. It's just that men are sometimes stupid. But that I think was like a couple of lines or like a paragraph in the actual thing. Like she didn't go into like the analysis of it that I just sort of did. It was just basically 2 lines explaining that, skyscrapers have a phallic nature, and the description of them is sometimes related. The description of components of skyscrapers is also related to male genitalia. The end. Like that's all that has in that article, and then the rest of it is actually how cities function and like how women interact within cities and that sort of things and that. And I think it's really interesting, all that sort of stuff. Again, I think it's wrong, but yeah, I don't feel that the lady who wrote this article would have gone with that as her sort of her like headline. So, but I could be wrong. As I said, I didn't do any sort of research in this, but I feel like this is sort of like editors and that sort of thing, or maybe someone from marketing going like, this is how we're going to get more eyes on this if we have this like inflammatory headline. Or it could, like again, it could be the writers going like, like if you're talking about, like you said with The Guardian, they have about 10 opinion pieces a day. Like, it's not like 10 opinion pieces would be like submitted to them every day or whatever. Like, there's probably like 20 or 30 that get submitted to them every day, and it may be that, to make it stand out, they have these inflammatory headlines. But yeah, I
imagine it's more than that. I bet they get hundreds a day, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
because if it pays, then yeah, it'll get absolutely loads and stuff. Yeah, I imagine the one that Owen Jones did though was probably him that did it. It's fairly representative of the article, in and of itself and stuff, which is about whether sort of Labour needs to keep younger minority voters on side and stuff. That I think that's sort of, I suppose, a different thing to what you're talking about and stuff. But that's an example of how they're trying to get. A lot of views based on the sort of opinion based within it and stuff that's going to be divisive. It's interesting though, I did actually listen to an interview with the guy who was the head of the Guardian opinion piece team, basically. It was on a podcast called Talking Politics, and he was on there just to discuss sort of like opinion pieces in general and how he did it, kind of thing. And it was quite interesting because he was talking about like they were asking him, how do you like get stuff on there? What do you do to do? Is there a like voice of the newspaper and stuff? And he was saying that like it probably does conform to the opinions of the people reading it and stuff. And he was saying, we get a lot of people who think that they couldn't imagine why anyone would vote for Brexit, and I think it would go like towards that. And it was quite interesting because the person who was presenting it, they sort of pushed back a little bit, and she said like there's a lot of opinion pieces where they just sort of straight out say that the person who's against them, they're mad or something, or they're stupid, or they're wrong or something, rather than having the opinion of this is why they believe that, this is why I disagree with it. And I think she made some good points and sort of argued quite well against him, that there is sort of a tendency within a lot of opinion pieces as well to just portray the other side as, and I think it's from both really, like the Guardian and the sort of more extreme ones, and Jacobin. But I suppose Jacobin would isn't exactly going to say that people who agree with capitalism are correct or have a point of view, or like it probably won't say that they oh well they're just good factors and stuff. But I think there is a point that it is that that some of the people writing the opinion pieces can't understand where the other side is coming from and stuff. It's especially bad during. It's interesting as well actually because it's especially bad with the Guardian and stuff during election cycles, because obviously that's something where you have within a few weeks or fucking an American months or something, you'll have an actual concrete outcome and stuff. So a good example could be there's an election in America at the minute, Donald Trump. There are so many opinion pieces which will be Donald Trump is this far behind, and it's because he's ignored the white suburban woman. And the point of it's to get men to comment saying about that, or it's to women to comment saying how they're right or something. And there's not actually any advance in terms of the actual discussion of what Donald Trump's doing, correct or wrong. It's just to do that basically. And I suppose with the election stuff, it's quite funny after the 2016 election when people were blaming the tone of people who said Hillary was going to win by 20 points or something, and said that because of that it said it had a false sense of security. So I think they're especially bad during. I mean, you look at the American stuff now where it's the middle of an election, it's 100 days away, and they're pretty much garbage.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I think that I again, as I said, I don't think the issue is necessarily with opinion pieces in general. I think it's more to do with the marketing of opinion pieces and essentially the way things are set up to favour things within the attention economy. As you were saying, I think that you're right. I think that the old saying opinions are like arseholes, so everyone's got one. But to go further, and sometimes they stink. I think that I think with the especially with elections, I think that there has to be sort of a more narrow. You have to have a more narrow opinion on a particular thing, because with elections, sort of everyone is covering that. Everyone is talking about it. It's not a sort of, I suppose, a niche thing, talking this woman going back to her talking about this way cities are sexist, and that that's that in and itself is a very niche sort of idea and that, but it's not well, it's the first time I've ever heard about it. It's niche in the it's niche in that not everyone is talking about and that sort of thing. Whereas with election stuff, it's everyone is talking about it to get more attention. You have to have a very niche opinion about one particular thing. That's the one thing that you need to be talking about. Whether that is, what white suburban women are doing with the Trump vote or whatever. So I think that there's sort of, and so everyone's sort of, elections seem to sort of ramp that up. So basically everyone is trying to get their voice out there with all this other shit that's going on. So I think to be perfectly honest, we've sort of said it a few times, and I think that the major issue is that this idea of that the idea that things need to grab people's attention, but the reason that they need to grab people's attention is that it is linked specifically to a profit motive. So I think that there is things I think can grab people's attention. I think headlines do need to grab people's attention regardless of whether there's a profit motive or not. But I think that what is particular is that there seems to be this idea that you take the most sort of salacious thing from an article and put that as your headline because you want to bring people's attention to it, because that's basically what your money relies on, rather than, I want to bring someone's attention to this because this is an important thing that people should know about.
Yeah, or misrepresenting the opinion piece itself is the worst one. So we're nearly at the hour, and we've given people the food for thought. I found some funny Guardian headlines. Should we go through them as a bit of a laugh for the end? Yeah,
all right. But you do understand that I'll probably have to go along later and read all of these articles now.
Okay, so I've got. I found there were links to 4 of them, and the rest of them are just pictures, so they might be less reliable. I'll go for the ones that I had links to make sure they're definitely real. So the first one, opinion piece on animal welfare. Fish, no, they're sea kittens.
Okay, yeah.
And the subtitle
I actually want to read that one.
Fish feel pain, learn from each other, and remember, will rebranding them stop us treating them so cruelly?
What the fuck?
So it's an opinion piece on how if we rebrand fish sea kittens, people might be nicer to them, basically.
Oh, okay, I see. So that's the continuation of the article. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, based on that headline and that subheading, I don't not agree with them. So, I think that if your role is to actually stop the killing of fish and that sort of thing, yeah, but I think that potentially rebranding them as sea kittens would probably work. It is a bit ridiculous, but all right, hit me with another one.
Okay. Before we set up colonies on Mars, we need to discuss renaming its moons.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So the subtitle, the thing that gives it a description, keeping Phobos and Deimos, which means fear and terror, implies it's totally cool to demonize our neighbor in the sky.
Okay. I'm struggling with this one now. I probably will have to read that one because there's there is a reason that they're named that to do with sort of Greek mythology and that sort of thing, but and I do think that is kind of pointless crap. But all right, okay, I'm gonna read that one later.
The guy who's written it's got the most amazing name ever, Fortunato Salazar.
Oh, that's a pretty good name. Maybe he should change his name.
Okay. So third one. Why don't Africans make wildlife films? Okay. Such films often focus on Africa and feature African animals, but most seem to be fronted by middle-class white men.
Yeah. What? Okay. Again, another one that I would have to read, but what are they hoping to achieve with that? I think the point of a documentary on animals and that sort of thing is just informing people about it. And Is there something specific? Oh, yeah. Again, I'm gonna have to read this one. But is there something specific? Like the only thing that I can think of is that there may be sort of a more like cultural significance of like particular animals that someone from the region like could actually bring to that, which would be interesting. But other than that, like if it's just a documentary about a particular animal, I don't see any like thing. Anyway, go on.
Okay, next one. People with a vagina have needs, but making their baby cannon smell of fruit is not one of them.
Okay, what's the subtitle?
The subtitle is, it wasn't true, but the story that Sweet Peach Probiotics wanted to re-aroma women's vaginas said a lot about men's attitudes.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I can get where that's coming from. That sort of, vaginas are smelly things. That's what a lot of men think. I wouldn't know. I don't go near them. I think heterosexual sex is unnatural. It shouldn't be allowed. But if men are going to do such abominable acts, I feel like that's I also feel like that's sort of like a personal thing. Like I think sometimes maybe when like you could make the same like sort of thing about deodorant, like just general deodorant, like we do have this as people, we do have this aversion to like our natural body odors and stuff like that. So anyway, next.
Alright, so the next one actually is actually the perfect example of what you were saying. So, headline is it okay for scientists to weep over climate change?
Okay. Alright, hit me with the subtitle.
The devastating impact CO2 emissions are having on oceans recently brought one professor to tears during a radio interview. But does such passion validate or weaken science in the audience's eyes? So I have an opinion on that. What's your opinion, seeing the actual thing underneath?
My opinion on that is I think that sort of policing someone's reaction to the existential threat of climate change is a pretty fucking shitty thing to do. If someone is brought to tears by the fact that the world is going to end,
everyone they know will die.
Everyone they know will die. Maybe just shut the fuck up. Maybe you just shouldn't have an opinion on that. But anyway. What's your opinion?
You see, my opinion is, I think that's actually a really interesting topic to discuss, whether scientists crying helps or hinders the cause of raising awareness for climate change. So if it's to move it into a sort of more, like emotional place rather than, scientific, I think that could actually be a really interesting opinion article. Whether the idea of him crying makes people more or less likely to favour, whether does it make people think that it's an emotional issue or a political issue kind of thing. And I don't think any of that is shown by the headline. Is it okay for scientists to cry over climate change?
Yeah, no, I agree, because I was completely baffled by it. I'm like, well. Yeah, it's totally okay for anyone to cry over it.
Over the death of humanity.
Yeah, exactly. It's not something I've found myself getting weepy over, but I can understand people getting upset about it, and fair enough. It's fucking terrible. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to read that one. So we may talk about it in a future episode.
Okay.
Whether it's
there's some quick hits. So the funniest ones tend to be ones where it's what do we call it? Like cultural stuff rather than political stuff like that. This barbecue is an American tradition of enslaved Africans and Native Americans.
Okay.
And then the thing underneath, the traditional holiday cookout has its roots in the cooperation between black and indigenous people struggling to get or keep their freedom from colonialists.
I'm really confused by that. I suppose this is like the sort of it's similar to that article I was that sort of kicked this off, is that it's not something I've ever thought about, and I suppose that might be like interesting to sort of read and sort of see where their opinion takes them on that, and like whether that makes sense. But yeah, I can't sort of I can't pass it because it's not something I've ever sort of thought about.
Okay, so you'll like these ones. This one, just how gay is anal play really?
It's totally gay. Even if you do it as a heterosexual, it's gay. Famous pickup artist and men's rights activist. I don't know whether he was actually one of those, but he was in that sort of ilk. Roosh V famously tweeted about men being arse men when it comes to women, like enjoying women's asses and stuff like that, saying that it's like a gateway to becoming gay.
Nice.
And it sort of started this whole this whole thing of like bros is a gay to fuck a woman in the ass, and then like it's sort of, it's spiraled out from there. So like any sort of thing that like challenges sort of in the minds of these people, anything that sort of challenges masculinity, it's like, is it gay to be something, whatever it is, which is a really sort of interesting meme, like, sort of like, guys, is is it gay to like love your wife? Stuff like that. Yeah. Anyway,
so the subtitle for that is the kind of sex that gay men are having isn't exclusive to the LGBT community. It's just that few straight people admit having it. So I imagine that, again, the headline for that wasn't what the guy intended. It's just somebody thought of that. Yeah, gay is anal play really.
Yeah.
And put it on.
Is the author Roosh V? I just
no, it's someone called Zach Stanford, basically.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Okay, so this next one is the funniest one yet. I created the ISIS dildo flag at London Pride to start a dialogue, not to get a laugh.
Whoops, you failed again, buddy. What, like, okay, yeah, yes, like, you, what, like, did you do this to, like, did you think that, like, everyone would take this, like, 100% seriously, or, like, you're putting dicks on a terrorist flag, like, anyway, what's the subtitle?
I flew the flag in London's gay pride parade because ISIS is deserving of mockery and disrespect. I never thought CNN would think it was real.
Okay, alright, yeah, no, that's... Okay, I think that's gone, like, sort of... Wait, that seems to be the exact opposite of what the headline
This is what I mean, yeah. What the guy's saying is that it was a joke and people thought it was funny, but...
Yeah.
Again, the headline wouldn't tell you that.
Alright. So, did we get to a good take on this at all?
We didn't, but the next one, we might end on this one then.
Yeah, all right.
If the personal is political, is it ever okay to want a spanking?
Wait, if the person is political, is it ever...
Oh, sorry, if the personal is political.
Okay. Okay, all right. Come on, hit me with that subtitle.
Okay, hold on.
Oh.
So, 50 Shades of Grey might not prioritise consent or BDSM protocol, but don't worry too much about what turns you on.
What?
That's the subtitle for that one.
that's I'm still like not even. Again, I feel like they're two contradictory like things. Okay,
I've skipped around a little bit. This seems to be more indicative. To some, the incongruity between politics and our erotics suggests a deeply buried secret about the true nature of the individual. But maybe they hint at something far, far simpler. Perhaps the easiest way for some of us to cope with the uncomfortable and unfamiliar is to subconsciously subvert it into an object of erotic fascination. So I think basically what she's trying to say is that if you personally want a spanking, can you still be a feminist, basically?
Yeah, no, that's a really like that's something that I've seen like people discuss and that sort of thing, like whether it is like whether things like BDSM and that sort of thing are actually like empowering to women or even like or whether that's just sort of succumbing to a male fantasy and all that sort of thing. And that's actually like a really interesting topic of conversation. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. That like I think you can still engage in BDSM and that sort of thing and still be like a feminist and believe in like women's empowerment, because and I think this is like what it actually sort of gets at is, and I feel like I'm about to like just go on another hour of talking about this, but basically boiling it down is the difference between like a liberal perspective on something and the leftist perspective on something. So basically when liberals talk about feminism, it is more about individual empowerment and stuff like that, whereas leftists is about systematic power and systematic equality and that sort of thing. So like from a liberal perspective, you could say yes, that is the case, that like women submitting themselves to BDSM and stuff like that is not a feminist action. But from a leftist perspective, what you would say is that it doesn't really matter what you do as an individual as long as the systemic structures create equality for the sexes. But anyway, that's like a big topic.
Yeah, maybe a future one we could.
I feel like a lot of these articles could just be future like discussions, because like they are like very sort of about like takes and what we're talking about is with our good take bad take thing. But yeah.
Well, this one definitely could be. This will be the last one. So I think we should do an episode on this. When it comes to sexual desirability, balls are often treated as an afterthought.
It's true.
We can reimagine testicles as more than an unavoidable component of reproduction, as a crude metaphor for bravery.
I actually, interestingly, the other day I watched a stand-up comic, and she was talking about like testicles and that sort of thing, and like how bad they look, and one of the things she was saying is that like obviously sexuality isn't a choice because like because basically any straight woman, the minute she saw a man's balls, would just be like, "No, I'm going with women." So yeah, let's talk about that one day.
Let's do it. Do you have any final thoughts, or shall we leave the audience with that?
I would say my final thought on this is that I think that like generally, and I think that like if anyone sort of listens to this and listens to other stuff that we've done, you know, we obviously think that the profit motive should be taken out of a lot of things, and that I think that this sort of hyper capitalism that we're living in is creating a system where we are that creates these sort of problems, and you know we basically need to tear the system down and start again.
Second that motion.
Yep. All right. Great. We got to the end of that.